ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。So, what to call this video? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hope you're well and safe. This question comes up repeatedly, and it's not a bad idea to remind ourselves repeatedly over time. So I've talked about this in different ways at different times. Buddhist personages, bodhisattva, clear light, whatever, all these long, drawn out, multi adjective kind of naming conventions in the, well, thank you, Mr. Aircraft, in the tradition of Buddhist texts, Buddhist teachings. The analogy is often, I think, too quickly made to Western fables or moralistic stories, right? I think it's easy to miss a lot of the nuance that the teachings of Buddhism specifically bring to bear on the human experience. And so I just wanted to say a few words on that today and create a bit of a reference video here. Because I think it's essential to our really understanding what Buddhist thought and Buddhist teaching and the way Buddhism looks at the world in general through the teachings, certainly. And I think it would be a great insight into your study and your understanding of your practice. One of you sent me an email asking about the significance or the meaning of, in that first silent meditation of Gangyo, where we express gratitude to Bonten, Taishaku, Niten, Myoja-ten, all of these entities, these personages in our lives. And so, just like if you go to threefoldlotus.com and you go to the core study materials page, one of the top buttons is the personages of the Gohanzen, or Gohanzen personages map. Because one of the first questions we ask is what is all that scribbling about on the mandala? What does it mean? And then we find out they're persons or personages, and why are they there and how they function. Ewan McMichael did a wonderful encapsulation of all these different personages. And that's all in that PDF on threefoldlotus.com. So please check that out. Bonten, Taishaku, they're all on there. They're all on this mandala of Gohanzen as well. But here's the fundamental reason why we have all of these names and personages isn't because there's deification or gods or anything outside ourselves. This is a teaching convention that I think much more simplistically is used in the West when we talk about fables or certain characters. Are character-driven cartoons, fables, movies, they tend to have very narrowly dimensioned people or characters. This person is evil. And then we have a very immediate sense of punishment, right? And it's kind of eye for an eye. It's a simple equation. Buddhism doesn't see life in this very simplistic way. And I think it's very key to our understanding the teachings, as a matter of fact. You've heard me say over and over again that the teachings of Buddhism are, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. But Buddhism being a teaching that is, what I was going to say is of the mind and how the mind works. How do we, after all, our experience of life is a mental, cognitive, perceptive process, right? It's not like you can, like a computer, for instance, that you can plug a flash drive in, like in the Matrix, where they plug into the back of their neck, and they'd want to know how to fly a helicopter, and in a few seconds, wow, they know how to fly a helicopter. Life just isn't like that. And even if it were, Buddhism always suggests that because the experience takes place in your mind, that it is individual to your train of karma, your momentum, your energetic fulfillment of a particular potential, group of potentials that we identify as our self, experiences through myriad filters that are unique to you and I. So Buddhism always looks at the world, at our behavior, from that unique perspective. So, for instance, if you have a little boy who's a kleptomaniac, he's always stealing stuff, whether people in his environment know that about him or not, most fables or simple stories would say, well, he's got to be punished for his behavior. So maybe by being a thief, people just won't trust him, or more directly, he'll be caught and punished. But it's a rather simplistic story, and that may factually have some merit. But Buddhism looks at that same situation and says, well, Peter is violating a great deal of things. First of all, he's not respecting himself. Oh, hadn't really thought about that, right? He's not respecting his own. His world is about valuation instead of dignifying and liberation from attachment. So he's really violating his own enlightenment, even without knowing it, but, right? And the way that manifests in Peter's life could be anything from terrible teenage acne to, as I said, the mistrust of others. He may, in fact, get away with this behavior well into his adult life. But in Buddhism, again, there would be no getting away with. There's always a cost. And the cost is based on the violations of character and its potential for enlightenment that's deeply personal to Peter's experience of the world. You know, maybe at some point Peter sees the light and he doesn't do that anymore. And maybe out of his guilt, he does a lot of, what do you call it? Not pro bono, but he tries to do beneficial works to give back to society and so forth, and atone in some way for his bad behavior. But that doesn't really work. It may assuage his feelings of guilt, but he's impacted his life and therefore his environment with the negativity for a very long time. And he may get arrested in his good works for violating tax laws or something of that nature. And we, because it doesn't equate simplistically, might not see the connection. I'm not making great analogies here, but my point is that this is why in Buddhist teachings, specifically in Shakyamuni's teachings, he creates these personages like Dairakuten no Mao, the devil king, who lords over the three great obstacles, right? Evil friends, family, and is it ignorance? What's the third one? Anyway, obstacles that keep us from what? Staying on a path toward our enlightenment. This is the goal of life. The goal of life is to live life as fully to our maximal potential, positive potential, as possible. And it's an ongoing interdependent relationship between our samsaric physical reality and our samsaric physical reality outside of us. It's the same thing. That the perception that there's a separation is what creates our anxieties about possessing and holding on to. Does that make sense? If you know that there is truly no separation between you and everything you experience, then what anxiety could you possibly feel about hanging on to that experience? You're in it. You're part and parcel of it. It's a very difficult idea, though, to get through our heads, because our experience of life tends to be, here I am, and I can identify all of this stuff around me as not me. But that's the fallacy. That's what makes us anxious. That's what stresses us out. I don't want to lose that. I want to have that. I want to know it's permanent with me. I know this car says who I am. This division it's a false view. And remember, the whole reason Buddhism came about for Siddhartha was that he was searching for this ultimate truth that would liberate ourselves from the sufferings of birth, anxiety, sickness, stress, right? Discord and death. Discord not as conversation, but discord as friction. And this is the whole reason for Buddhism. So if you're looking for what Buddhism means, that's what it means. Have the maximal fulfilled life that you can experience. The only thing keeping you from it is your obsession with hanging on to stuff. All stuff. Not just the house and the car, but the hair, the love we're all searching for, the aspects that we identify as characteristics rather than the function of all life, of which there is no separation. There are just various unfathomably numerous potential manifestations of it. But we mistake the manifestations as it. It's what creates the manifestations that is common to all. And that perception relieves us, liberates us from that constant clinging, craving. And so we can just experience it completely. Right? So what I'm getting to is these personifications indicate entire realms of thought that surround the activity. We may pinpoint that Peter steals. But if you steal, or I steal, or Betty steals, or whoever steals, it may look on the surface like the same activity. But Buddhism says if you look within, the motivations, subtle differences as they may be, or very large differences as they may be, that motivates that behavior are as different as the consequences might be. And so, in that vein, instead of saying guy in a black coat and a black hat is thief, therefore evil, Buddhism says that behavior of disrespect, of keeping you from your own dignity and enlightenment, a behavior that's actually destructive to others more or less, depending on that specific instantiation of that behavior, and always affecting the environment just as much as the self. There's no disconnect there. It's constantly going both directions. It's a whole sphere of possibility, and overall impacts negatively one's perception and one's environment, the influence of both directions. What kind of causes are you making? Because cause isn't personal, it's it's macro rather than micro, right? And so is effect. There may be a personal effect, but there never is a personal effect without a environmental effect. And the colors, the nuances, the differences in those is unique to the one that perceives it as the self and the environment of self. So that influences the environment differently. So there's a whole host of types of behavior, types of effect. And so to encapsulate those possibilities, Buddhism selects a naming convention. We'll call that bodhisattva, or he's not bodhisattva in this case, right? Because that would be positive energy. So this would be a demon. And a demon that would be about possession, or see, you'd have to look more generally at what that behavior is, because sometimes it's easy to see a kid stealing candy from a store, but it's not easy to see when somebody is taking away somebody else's accomplishments to bolster their own ego. That's not as easily defined. People taking credit for other people's work, people manipulating accounts so that they don't necessarily cause harm to someone else, but they are achieving gains that are inappropriate to them. See, this is the world of anger. This is the world of manipulation and backstabbing and personal gain, an aspect of avarice that drives negative behavior that actually does harm other, maybe not directly, but in the scope of negativity, negative energy being pushed into one's environment, you are actually harming others, even if they don't perceive it. So this is very nuanced and complex, right? And this is why we have the Devil King, Dairaku no Mao. Because that demon encompasses all of that in all of its nuances as a type, a stereotype of activity that is negative. Does that make sense? And that is also why you will see certain characters, certain personages reappear in different stories because they have different aspects in the way we interact with our mental conditions and tendencies. Do you see? So it's never quite clear cut. There may be examples of it that seem somewhat direct, but the implications are also always much larger. I hope that makes sense. It's certainly within the scope of the mandala, as we've discussed before. The mandala is a shorthand, a condensation of all of the scholarship of Buddhism as it culminates in the Lotus Sutra. Yeah? So why have Hachiman on this mandala? That doesn't seem like a story from Shakyamuni, does it? That would be a good question. But then we have to understand that in Nichiren's world, Hachiman, for the civilization that he grew up in, his social reflector, demonstrates a certain kind of national posturing, cultural posturing, which affects each and every individual of a nation. In his nation, Japan. But it is a broader issue, right? Japan had Hachiman. In the United States, the same kind of fanaticism and alignment could be said of the American flag. There's a tremendous amount of fervor around the flag of this country. Every country has a flag, but there's a special kind of consideration in the United States about the flag. And so the flag in the United States, referring back to Buddhism again, would be a personage that is a combination of many complex and nuanced characterizations. Everything from it's a beautiful symbol identifying our country to I've heard people say that the people should be murdered for disrespecting the flag, which seems incredibly I can't understand that kind of thinking, but it exists. We have federal penalties for just treating the flag improperly. Right? Allowing the flag on display to be tattered is a federal offense. How much it's enforced, I don't know. We've seen plenty of people burn flags, and they have been arrested for it. I don't want to get too hung up on the American flag. All I'm saying is every cultural group, from Don't Tread on Me to Hachiman, have these strong national identification. And so from that standpoint, understanding that kind of potential, that energy that is based on clinging and identity is a really good symbol that Buddhism spends a great deal of time taking apart, analyzing. So, like Devadatta, which you would argue is a much more equatable sign of that, Hachiman certainly belongs on the mandala, because it's not Hachiman so much as it is what Hachiman represents. a war hero who becomes the identity of, right, of the Japanese as this honorable warrior. So yeah, Hachiman is on that mandala. There are not a lot of personages like that, but in a way you could say all the personages, including Shakyamuni Buddha, are like that. Because think about it. Buddha is the universe. It's you and I. It is the fundament on which everything forms. But we can only experience that, see that, understand that in this human form with a mind, right? When there's no human, when we die, there's no mind. So there is no perception that we call Buddha. But everything is from that source. A chair can't see its own Buddha, but it is nonetheless a formation, is it not? So Shakyamuni Buddha is the great sage of the Shakya clan, Shakyamuni, a person who transcends his human form, samsaric form, to be, to teach, to be, to experience, an exemplar of Buddha in this living form. So Shakyamuni Buddha is also a personage of actualizing our Buddha. So yeah, he's on the mandala. Are you following this? It's a trope. It's a very sophisticated one. And if you're not aware or cautious of, when you read this material, of not seeing things as simple tit for tat, but of understanding a sphere of experience, then you start to understand more and more how Buddhism is a discussion of mental cognition and perception, which by its very nature is, to say it's multifaceted is not, it is to not encompass the grandeur of the investigation. But it's never just simply this begets that. It's this that is immense begets a huge nuance of effect, albeit through the particular channels of you and I and our particular manifest potential. And yet we all realize at the point of chanting the same clarity, Buddha. So in a way, you could say that I am a personage, as you are a personage, of aspects of the same process, life. So all of that is really synopsized to the point of perhaps missing it when we read in the first meditation our gratitude to Bonten, Taishaku, Niten, Gaten, Myojiten, so on and so forth. The forces of the universe, for lack of better words, is basically a meditation on the tremendous and almost unfathomable reality of how we influence our experience of the universe and how the universe mirrors exactly the causes, the energies, the forces, really, the influence that we put out, kind of like feeler gauges, the feedback loop is something we need to appreciate as our teacher and our protector. Because as much as I didn't mean to focus this talk on Peter's negative behavior, there's just as much Peter's great, wonderful, nurturing behavior when he truly cares about what's going on in his environment, whether it's persons or animals or plants, fish in an aquarium. It's all about attitude. What is your attitude and intent? If your attitude and intent, that's the energy you're putting out, the influence that you're putting out. The world, the universe, your friends, your family, everything mirrors that intent. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it, because even if you have all great intent, some people will come at you. But that's that akuten mal, right? That's somebody else's version of you. Seeing what you're doing to them is an affront, an attack. And so they react. So the challenge is to stay benevolent in that, to understand that that's their perception. Don't take it on, right? Don't take offense. Let offense sit there on the picket fence, getting sore in the butt and demonstrating someone else's struggle, and be compassionate with them. You don't need to sit on that picket fence. You can get off. Relieve yourself. You don't need to do this. You're hurting yourself. You're not saying anything about me, even though you seem to be trying. You're not harming me. You're harming yourself. Don't take the offense. That's also putting positive energy into one's environment. And your environment will respond. It will protect you from harm. Right? So this is Bonten Taishaku Niten Gate. That's what we're talking. That's the gratitude we have for that mechanism, for that interdependency that demonstrates why it's so important for us to maintain a positive attitude with positive intent. Because as much as it enlivens our Buddha nature, it also can repel or protect us against our own manifestation of negativity. Because when this person comes up and tells me I'm a this, I'm a that, and tries to label me with negative things, if I take that offense, I'm accepting that I might be some of that. And why would we do that to ourselves, right? That's a tough lesson right there. Don't take offense. Why should you? Just because the tray is going around the room with all this offense, you don't need to reach in there and take it. Keep it. You can keep that for yourself, because that's what that is. It says nothing about me. Because sometimes what you put out in the world pops pimples. See, you see how nuanced this is? You could just say, well, if I attract from my environment and I'm putting out good stuff, why do I get this bad stuff exploding in my face? Because you're putting out medicine. Right? Why was Nichiren so persecuted? Because he was putting out truth. And a lot of people don't want to hear that truth because it pops their myths. It pops their poison. You're disabling their enjoyment of their power, their avarice, their anger. You're blowing it away. Stop it. You're taking away my advantage. Well, your advantage is poison. Here's an opportunity. Clean it up. Screw you, da, 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 right? So it's not always sunshine and roses, as they would say, as we might say. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for listening. I want to continue with the Go Show. We may be able to finish it today, actually. Not sure. No, it doesn't. No, it's going to take up more. Anyway, so let me get back to that. I hope this helped you understand the personages thing in Buddhism. I think it will help with understanding a lot of the teaching, the lessons, certainly the characters. They're not actual people. They represent mental conditions, mental experience, causality, right? Okay, I'm done with that topic for now. And thank you again for listening. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, download the audio podcast. If you can support, you can do it on Patreon. You can do it at paypal.me/SifuSylvain. There's the bookstore. There's the Gohanzon store. And of course, lots of free information on threefoldlotus.com. So don't forget to check that out. It's a good teaching aid too. Sometimes when people are curious and ask us about Buddhism, we get all tongue-tied. Well, it's complicated. The easiest thing you can always do is invite somebody to come and chant with you. That's the most direct, easiest thing you can do, and it's incredibly powerful. But just for your own sanity, this is why I provided so many documents on threefoldlotus.com as PDFs. You can download them. You can keep them, a little library of quick answers to things like, why do we chant? What is Daimoku? What is the personages on the mandala? I wouldn't dive into the most complex things right away with somebody who's just discovering Buddhism, but certainly answering some of those key questions. If nothing else, it will give you confidence about how to respond to questions from. You never know where it's going to come. When you first start especially, but over time as you practice Buddhism, I've had people walk up to me in the aisles of a supermarket and just start asking me about Buddhism. Like, I don't even know you. But it's really nice to be able to have just little packets of information to go, well, this. And, you're being a bodhisattva. And you will attract questions from your environment. So enjoy that. Don't be afraid of it, okay? Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. That's it for today. Or not today. I'm going to start another video as soon as we're done here. But just take care of your health. And be kind. Be kind to yourself. It's much easier to be kind to others when you're kind to yourself. Right? No need to be a martyr. Bye for now.